All right, I'm back. I'm ready to talk about some magical garbage, so let's go ahead and just dive straight into the video, shall we? Poppixie has to be one of the most shameful entries into the Winx Club intellectual property. It is almost completely without redemption or merit. You know, you can say whatever you'd like about World of Winx and Fate the Winx Saga. They're not great shows, I certainly don't like them. But at the very least, they don't interact with the actual canon of the real Winx Club show. You can just say, oh, they're in their own continuity. They have a completely different thing going on. And that doesn't make them good shows, but it certainly does make a lot of the worst things about them a bit more forgivable. But you can't say that about Pop Pixie. This show not only exists within the same universe, but it's like Pop Pixie laid down in the middle of the road and the real Winx Club show tripped over it and never recovered from that stumble. The Pixies and Pixie Society is so different in Pop Pixie from what we're shown in the Winx Club. It's actually really bizarre that they made this show at all. Like, if you're trying to cash in on the Winx Club crowd, you'd think that you'd try and appeal to fans, like, really play into the pre established things about the Pixies that people like. But no, they made this show, like, weirdly gross in parts. It's got a weird problem with racism that I'll get into in a later video because it's a lot to talk about. The most baffling thing about this is the gender bending that they did to certain pixies that were in the original show. And that's what I want to talk about today. It was a baffling decision that was 100% unnecessary. And just before I get into the rest of this, if you've got some kind of headcanon about this show, like these characters transitioned and that's why they're now male, I don't know why you would waste your brain power coming up with a headcanon for this show, but I mean, I'm in full support of that. But we should not pretend like that was an intentional thing that Rainbow did. They weren't trying to give anyone representation. This was a decision made by somebody who just does not understand the property that they're handling. And what's really crazy about it to me is they went through all the trouble to change these characters, redesign them, and everything. And then they just were barely in the show. They maybe have like one or two episodes apiece where they actually show up and do anything like noteworthy. And I kind of get where this corporate idea came from, this weird decision to just gender bend some of the pixies without any kind of an explanation or a reference or anything. They're making it their own show. The Pixie Village cannot just be only girls. They are trying to appeal to a wider demographic. But I think they should have just made more pixies that were boys and left the characters we already know alone. I think when you decide to retool a character that already exists to fit some kind of representation, you're kind of admitting to the fact that you don't think you can make any like new likable characters. And I mean that line of thought tracks because all of the original pixies that they came up with for this show are absolutely awful and I don't like any of them, especially Cherry or Sherry or Cherie. The pixie that highlights this problem for me is definitely Digit. Because unlike Livy, Zing, or Jolly, Digit was in the main cast of Pixies. She was Techna's Pixie. Or he was Techna's Pixie. I don't know how to address the gender of this character. I guess I'll try and stick with he because that's the most recent incarnation, but I view these characters as completely separate. Winx Club Digit and Pop Pixie Digit are just two separate entities in my mind, even though these shows happen in the exact same universe and there is proof. So, the reason why I feel like Digit was picked out of the entire main cast of Pixies to be reassigned like this is the fact that the people who write these shows do not respect Techna at all. They just think of her as the nerd, the science one. They don't really care about her theming or any of her character arcs anymore. Her powers really seem to suffer from the generic beam problem, like she's just shooting beams of binary code at things in later seasons. So, whoever wrote this show was like, all right, we'll take the least popular fairies, Pixie, and we'll just change her around because she's a recognizable face, but no one really cares about her all that much. And we'll just turn her into a boy and it'll be fine. But in this context, the change was 100% unnecessary because Digit is not in the show all that much. He makes a couple appearances here and there, but mostly it's in the background. And you might be thinking, oh, well, maybe they're just steering away from techno magic. Maybe they're going for more of a classic fantasy vibe. And first of all, that's boring. And second of all, that's wrong. Because the main group of pixies in Pop Pixie have a techno magic pixie, and his name is Fix It, and now there are just two techno magic boy pixies because I guess they just feel like girls don't like technology. Honestly, if you were going to make an original character that had techno magic and make him a boy so that more boys will watch this show, why would you go ahead and just change Digit as well? We know who Digit is. This issue is put on full display during Winx Club Season 6 when the Pixies show up again, but oh no, who's missing from the crowd? Digit, and for some reason Toon, even though Toon was never gender bent, but that's something for another video. I have no idea why they decided to just go with some random new pixies from Pop Pixie instead of just changing the characters back because nobody cares about Pop Pixie. Even when it came out, no one cared at all about Pop Pixie. They should have just kept Winx Club normal and just had Pop Pixie be a little offshoot, weird side universe to all of this. So, who was the pixie that replaced Digit? Who is Techna's new pixie that she just got and also has always had forever, we promise? Caramel. Why is it Caramel? I have no idea. She is a headstrong pixie of strength who runs a bakery called the Molly Moo. None of that has anything to do with Techna. Like, the pixies are supposed to be complementary to the fairy's personality in some way. They're supposed to, like, mesh really well. I cannot tell you at all what the thought process was for picking Caramel to be Techna's new pixie. And also, why does Digit being a boy now rule him out from being Techna's pixie? It's a really weird thought, but the only thing I can come up with is whoever was writing the show thought that people would read some kind of weird romance into like Techna and Digit's relationship if Digit's a boy. I don't know. It makes no sense. I am 100% positive whoever was working at Rainbow just did not like Techna. I can't really fathom why they thought it would be a good idea to gender bend these characters we already know and are accustomed to when they were just going to make new boy characters anyway. And it just kills me because out of all of the spin offs of Winx Club, this is the one that is actually inside the same universe as the main show. By all rights, I should not care about Pop Pixie like I do. But it's the fact that it changes Winx Club canon that forces me to think about this show. I watched season 6 and it's not a great season, but I can admire some of the aesthetics. I can turn it on mute and look at some of the pretty colors moving across the screen. But then I see Caramel and Cherry or Sherry or Cherie. They call her all three of those names. And I just think, why are these random pixies here? Why did they feel the need to inject these random pixies in the show in the nostalgia bait season where they knew people who had watched other seasons would be at least turning it on occasionally to see what was going on? It's like the writers of this show don't go back and check what's already happened before. They're just like, nah, no, I'm pretty sure I can just make something up on the fly that will satisfy people who are invested in this. If you are a writer for a show, you should be forced to watch every episode that came before the one that you're writing. Also, putting boys in Pixieville is weird in some strange ways. And it's not that I don't want more male representation in the Winx Club. It's not like I'm against that at all. But the way they went about it, especially with this show, was weird. So you remember in the main show how the pixies pop out of a flower called the Tree of Life, and that's how they're born. They just pop straight out of the ground, and that's how pixies are made. Well, not so in Poppixie. We get told in like episode 3 or 4 that all of the pixies have parents that took care of them and everything. Like in episode 3 or 4, Loquette's parents show up. And it's actually pretty funny how her dad looks like Mike. But I think it's really weird how the pixies don't just magically get born from a plant anymore. Like, there are romantic couples in Pixieville who are just like falling in love, getting married, and having children. Like, they made the pixies weirdly mundane in this show. I never really thought that the pixies had romance, and it's not because they're all girls, but it's because they all look like toddlers, like 100% of the time. The old pixies just look like toddlers with wrinkles. It's so weird that they decided to like make romance a thing in this show. The biggest culprit of this crime is Amore. When Amore was introduced in season 2 of the Winx Club, like, it was very obvious that she loved romance, but I always thought it was in kind of a baby Cupid kind of a way. Like, oh, I love seeing people in love, not that she was like actively seeking out her own romantic fulfillment. It's just so weird to me when characters that look like babies are like trying to be romantic. It's so strange. But you know, the worst thing about this show is the fact that I'm not nearly done talking about it. But it's going to be a lot, so I think this is where I'm going to end it for today, and I will pick it up on another video sometime in the future. I'm not making any promises, but I am going to start trying to get more videos out. So, what do you guys think? Do you think I'm being too unreasonable and harping on things that ultimately don't matter? Or do you feel like I do and think this show should be erased from the timeline? Let me know in the comments below, and I will be back sometime soon with another video about Poppixie and hopefully videos on other topics. Like, have you guys ever watched Flowering Heart? That show's a train wreck. Alright, peace out.